Hello. Just quickly, there we go. So I'm here I work at Intuit. I've worked there for about 3 weeks now. When I started this talk, I was working at TransferWise, so most of the analogies and examples are from there. So it's about using data to decide what to do. It's basically, I just want to share some stories about what I've learned about how to really bake data into your everyday product management decisions. The reason I want to talk about it is because it's something I'm not very good at myself. So it's the thing that I work hardest at, which is why it's like freshest in my mind, if that makes sense. So I hate the phrase data-driven design because I don't think that actually means anything, or it means everything or something weird. So I like to talk about data-driven product decisions, product road mapping. When I was younger, I was quite unattractive and insecure. So I wanted people to love me. It's a really weird way to start, but it kind of explains where I'm going at the end. But I thought, how can I get people to love me? What can I do? And I thought, I know. I'll become a rock star. I looked more like that guy than an actual rock star, though, so I thought that's not going to work. No one's going to love me for doing music. I'll do sports, and I'll become a rugby player. Then I thought, I'm not really physically that guy. So I thought, how else can you get people to like you? And I realized, people talk about sports, music, and now they talk about apps and technology and things that they like. So I thought, cool, I'll do that, and people will talk about the stuff that I do, and I'll have my security, and I can stop crying myself to sleep every night. And I got this kind of dream where I think, my ultimate goal is to have Stephen Fry tweet about something I've built, because he's quite into his apps and his new stuff, so my dream is to to have him do that. It's quite depressing, and you can do it if you just go into the inspect element and change it. You can make it look like it actually happened. So I started to build products. I started to build stuff. Some were really good. This one I really like. It's an app called NightCapp, and it shows you which bars and clubs and pubs are still open around you throughout the night, so you can keep drinking. Because I thought, what better way to get people to like you than to be that guy that's like, I know a good place. And then some were really, really not good, like Tinder for Tinders is not a good product idea if any of you think of replicating it. It's basically you swipe through and it gives you different Tinder for, it's terrible. But what these did do was they got me a job at TransferWise. And I wanted to work for a startup that was growing and work for somewhere cool, and that kind of got me there. And I thought I had data all figured out until I realized that data is more than just traffic and conversion. For me, I could say cool, I got 500 visitors from this country because of this bit of marketing and it worked. They told these people and that kind of happened, and then my conversion rate is about 4% or whatever. That's great. If I change this, it's now 5%. But it's just, I just realized very quickly that it's so much more than that. And at TransferWise, how they do product is it's not the CEO or even the leadership team saying, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to get there, like the kind of Colonel Gaddafi route of this is how we're going to do product, but it's every single product manager deciding what they want to work on. So you've got 12 guys who can choose front end, back end, product marketing, there's some creative product bits. So you've got people all moving in the same direction, but kind of going slightly different ways. You get together and say, I want to work on this. Someone else goes, that's not really in line with my vision for whether the product should be in 2 years' time. Maybe this. And it can get a bit of a cluster of arguments. And the CEO, Christo, used to have this great saying, well, he probably still does, I just don't hear him say it anymore, but he used to say that no one is ever wrong, they just have access to different information. So when I look at the product in 2 years' time, I would say, I think it could do this, and that could be really cool. Someone else would say, actually, no, it should do this instead. And no one's right or wrong. It's just, in my experience and using my knowledge, I believe this is right, someone else believes that is right. When you've got 12 people doing that, plus CEO, stakeholders, board, customer support, customers themselves telling you where to go, it can all be a bit of a minefield. So data was the one unifying thing that we had across, I think there was like 4 different countries, 5 or 6 different offices. Everyone could agree that the number 2 would always be bigger than the number 1, and therefore we could all align around data and say this is what works and this is what isn't. So it just became a hugely important part of how we did product. So what is data-driven product design? Good question, Graham. Let's answer it. So there's 3 things I always try and look for in terms of data points. Right, like to me, actually, like product management in general is about improving the metrics around these things. So the first is delight. Obviously, NPS, Net Promoter Score, is like a huge driver around that, but also return rates, social media sentiment, just like really getting that core delight. And that's not really my thing. I try and like to think about what to build next to get there, rather than to maximize that delight. And then the kind of middle one is impact. It's to say, we've done this thing that we think is good, and really just nailing down what improvement you've had to your customers' lives. Because without that, you're just blindly going, and you're saying, this is better, this is better, this is better. And eventually you get to a point where you look back and you go, actually, this is a bit of a weird place that we're in. The overwhelming main reason of why you should use data is because, like I said, it allows you to focus relentlessly on this stock photo image of your users. It lets you, so when my art teacher used to tell me that, when I used to suck at drawing, and when I would draw a portrait, he said, when anyone draws a portrait of any human being, they actually start drawing themselves, because the human face that you see the most is your own. And I realized that when I was building product or doing design, I would be doing it for myself. I'd be saying, what would I want to see at the output of this? Even if I was building a website for people to buy glasses in Russia, I'd be saying at the end of the day, I know my customers, but I'm putting myself in their shoes rather than just looking at them and their actions. So by going through this data kind of approach, I managed to completely divorce myself from the build process and the testing process, and no longer care at all, almost, about how I felt about a product. But if the metrics are good and it's going in the right direction, that became what I would care about, rather than saying to my friends and family and myself, this thing looks really good and it works really well. So, So there's 2 types of data that I like to work with. One is company-based data. This is the really obvious stuff. This is just stuff that all companies will have. Maybe you don't to start with, but eventually you'll get to the point where you have this kind of data on your customers. But the second bit, which is lacking in lots of places, is the user-based data. So it's just a case of you'll often ask this data, but keeping it all in one central located place is super, super important. So how old they are, what kind of operating system they use. At TransferWise, they would record how you made your first transfer and save them in the database, and how you made your last transfer. So you segment customers saying, this is an iPhone user, this is an Android user, typically, and you could look at them from that respect. And what this lets you do, aside from obviously building up an understanding of your users, is it lets you segment the data as much as you possibly can, as long as it's still relevant. And what I mean by that is, for example, when I started at TransferWise, I was really proud, really happy, and I got told, right, you're in charge of NPS, that's your thing. And it was really high. It's mid-80s. And I thought, I can't do anything with this, but I'll make sure it doesn't go down. My job is going to be make sure that the NPS doesn't drop. So the NPS started dropping for about 1 or 2 weeks, and I had no idea what to do. I still knew I didn't want to ask for help. Then one of the guys that's really, really good with data-driven product sat down with me for about 2 minutes, looked through the data, and then showed me that the UK data, or the data for customers based in the UK, was exactly the same as it was. So nothing had actually changed. But we were growing massively in India, which is a new market. And for whatever reason, Indian customers weren't giving us as high NPS data. So our product wasn't not improving. So because I was running around going, what have we done? What have we changed? What can we roll back? Are people hating us? Have we now gone from reached the tipping point where we're no longer in the innovators, early adopters, and we're now getting towards the laggards who don't have as high? I was panicking. And he just really calmly pointed out that it was just the balance was shifting in terms of how we were collecting our data. So fun fact, if anyone here is working with conversion as your main metric, just go to your marketers and try and change your PPC spend from social spend to Google spend, and your conversion rates will skyrocket, because the high intent traffic from Google versus the low intent traffic from Facebook, again, I had a problem where I was looking at conversion rates going way down, and it turns out we're just getting more traffic from somewhere else. So just having that segmentation data is really, really valuable. So at Intuit, we do something similar when we launch new products. I'm currently launching a new product, which goes live on Wednesday. I know, really exciting. And so they did the unit of one approach, where you solve for one person, then solve for their segment, and then solve for more segments. And when I started, we didn't have the data to find out which of our users were in that segment. The mentality was, we'll market to it, we'll say it to them, and we'll work it out. But so we've chucked up a little modal that just says to you what industry you're in, so that we can say, right, we know that people from this industry, which is our unit of one, are using this way, and they like it, they're engaged with it, or they're not. And then we can actually, any product improvements that we roll out, we can choose to ignore all the other, we can leave out all the other segments and really focus it on this one unit. Then the aim is to solve for their segments. So we say we're going for all carpenters, and we're going for all all highly skilled self-employed people, which carpenters are highly skilled, right? And then you go to more. So stack segmentation can help you grow from like making the product or making the thing that you're solving be perfect for one person, and then grow out from more and more. So in terms of using data for roadmap ideas, there's the obvious ones, right? Which is like sitting down with people, asking them about what they're doing, finding out their hopes and dreams and aspirations and their pain points and all that. One thing that lots of products are missing online is actively allowing me to give feedback. I don't want to be forced to give feedback or anything like that, but there's some things where I think like, this is really great. I love your offering. I really, really want to be a more engaged user if it did X. And if I don't have a place to provide that feedback, they're missing out on that valuable data of me and other people saying, guys, we want this. So rather than letting me just tell you, they're guessing what I'm trying to do. NPS surveys are an obvious one that I imagine most companies will send out. Two things that I learned from my last job as well. Sales teams and customer care people will have greater customer empathy than anyone else in the company. They can tell you exactly the pain that your customers or potential customers are feeling. They can tell you why people are leaving you, why people aren't coming to you in the first place. It is worth noting that they have an agenda. So if you talk to a salesperson, he'll be telling you what to change so that he can increase his sales the most, rather than minimize customers' pain. Customer service people will tell you what to change so that they can minimize the customer contacts, but also the things that are most ridiculous, the things that make the customers most angry. If they get one customer a year where you, for example, lose their money, which has never happened at TransferWise, but where that happened, actually that probably should be the focus if you lose the money. That's a really bad example. Let's move on. Well, again, it never happened. No one has ever. I also found out that like customers will tell you, like obviously you need enough of a customer base, enough of a following, but if you Google like Netflix improvements or Netflix ideas, a huge amount of people have gone through the trouble of designing and creating their own ideas for how Netflix can improve. It's like absolutely amazing. And I just think there's so much that data there. And I personally think the Netflix product is awful. I love the offering, but in terms of discovering content, it's terrible. And people have actually built extensions that you can just use their extensions and use it as a cover over Netflix, so you don't need to go through their interface. And it's just amazing to me that like all this data is out there. People are actively giving it up. They're actively giving their time for free to say, this is how I would love your product to improve. Good data means testing quickly. I used to worry that data and worrying too much about numbers and metrics would mean that I'm going slowly. Like I've got my vision, I know what'll work, I know what'll get people to go, good job, and I just wanted to do it without spending time looking back on it and retrospecting and all that. But I found that you can actually test really, really, really quickly improvements. So to give you a couple of examples, in Brazil, we noticed that through segmentation of Brazilian customers, we noticed that conversion rates were really, really low on this step where you entered in recipient details. Turns out it's because they had to type in some tax information that no one in Brazil wants to give, because in Brazil you can get out a loan if you have that tax information, even without anything else from the person. So if you ever want to scam anyone, go for a Brazilian. And the people, not the... Good. Mention waxing on stage. And what I found out was, so what I wanted to do for Brazil was to completely revamp the money to email. With TransferWise, you could send money to someone's bank account, or you could send them an email saying, hey, can you enter in your bank details? And I wanted to run straight ahead and just say, cool, we'll revamp the money to email, we'll make it a really nice, seamless process, we'll advertise it everywhere, let everyone know that you don't actually need the bank details. And I wanted to run ahead and do that, and I had a whole roadmap and lots of enthusiasm like a puppy. And again, one of the really data-driven guys said, hold up, if you just change this step, just change the copy, then we can actually test whether people want to use money to email, because no one was using it. And my theory was, no one uses money to email because it's a kind of crappy experience, so that's why they're not using it. And we looked at it and found that the question that we're asking people is actually send money to a bank account or send money via email. First of all, send money via email isn't really good English. I don't know what that means. I send money to the email and send money to a bank account. Everyone goes, yeah, I want to send money to a bank account. Of course, that's how you send money, right? So click that. So what we did was change it to I know their bank details versus I don't know their bank details. And that little step increased conversion for Brazil, something like 40%. I think it was 42%. So we just managed to, in half a day, my rule has always become, whenever you're testing something small, so even pre-MVP, testing something small, do something that you can design and build in half a day. And if you can't do that, then you'll probably have to use Typeform and MailChimp just to work out whether it's worthwhile or not. So just by doing that, we managed to have a nice impact. Similarly, that's a word, I noticed that speaking to our customer care people, we found that people were confused. We said bank transfer, pay by bank transfer, they thought it meant we would pull the money from the bank account. So I said, great, we'll use Go Cardless. Who's here somewhere? There you are. Way to go, guys. So we thought, right, we'll use them, and we'll integrate it, and it'll take a bit longer, but people expect to have it. Direct debit's a great way of paying for things, and it would take a few weeks, but then a bit more to get our own kind of licensee thing, whatever. And again, I had the whole roadmap ready to go, I was all excited. And then someone pulled me up and said, actually, what you can do is just do a really simple test and create almost a placebo button of offering it here as a payment method. And when you click on it, it doesn't actually do anything. Just black silence is not available for this route. But what it does do is it lets you test if it's something that people are interested in. So by doing that, you can see, so by doing that, we could see whether or not people were interested in clicking that as a payment method, despite the fact that we're taking an extra 4 days to reach there. So just nice, quick testing doesn't mean that data has to slow you down. It can just tell you a lot quicker if you're wrong. So a couple last things, because I have 1 minute 55 left. I can talk really fast. MVP data that I no longer trust through trial and error is email addresses, because they're very cheap. I sign up to a million things thinking, yeah, one day I'd really be interested in buying an Oculus Rift because I'll be really rich in the future, so I'll sign up to that. I'll never buy it. Feedback from anyone you know, positive or negative, because I've realized they're feeding back on you as a person rather than you as a thing. My mum's always going to tell me it's great, but a lot of my friends will go, that's a bad idea because of X, Y, Z. And I just realized that you'll get to a point where if enough of your friends are techies, they will always point out the flaws rather than just going, yeah, it's great, go for it, because that's what techies do. That's what people in our industry do. Traffic and referral rates mean nothing. I've realized this. I built a site that went semi-viral, got about 20, 30,000 visits in about 12 hours, and I was really excited. And then I had a look a week later, and it was getting 0 traffic, 100 hits a day. And I couldn't work out why. And then I realized that people didn't like what I was offering. They liked the thought. They liked the idea to say, hey, this is a great idea. I'll pass it on. I'll tell my friends. We'll do this. But no one actually needed it. It's like a BuzzFeed article saying 6 ways in which water makes you die. You go, wow, that's interesting. I'll click it. It won't give you any value, but you'll click it and you'll share it. And MVP data that I do trust is return rates, user investment, so people actively typing in things. If you get someone to type in something that's not an email address and invest to return, because they want to get returns, they want to get the reward later on, that means that they're saying, cool, I have value in the reward, I understand how I'm getting there, and there's some value in what you're doing. And if a user gives you money, it normally means like, finally, designing without data. When you design without data, it's basically just kind of like masturbation. It feels really good, but it doesn't actually do any good for anyone else, and you definitely shouldn't show your boss. You're basically just building for yourself. You can fail with no idea why. I've done this before with ideas I think are really, really good, but because I didn't capture the customer data and I didn't look really in depth at how people were using it, I couldn't work out if it was the premise, if it was the website name, if it was the design. I didn't know where I was going wrong, and so I just dropped what I still think are great ideas. You can succeed with no idea why, which is just as dangerous. If you say to anyone, in product, like, what should you build a product to be? It should be simple, it should have 1 or 2 value propositions, it should be very, very clear. But if you ask people why their customers love them, they can often reel off like 10, 20 reasons. Oh, because we're cheap, with this, with it, with that. And if you don't have a really concise idea in your own mind and understanding of what people use and why you're great, you could just go off in a completely wrong direction, and you won't have that kind of control that you're forced to if things aren't so perfect. And finally, you'll miss things that aren't logical. I've got it's not that good an example. Can I have 20 seconds? They're not even listening. Can I have 20 seconds? Yeah. Take your time, buddy. So this really weird thing happened in TransferWise that genuinely changed my perception of product, because to me, product is it was easy. I thought, this is cool. You turn up, you say, this is what's wrong, because people tell you what's wrong, and then you go, cool, I've got this page, I'm going to get rid of all the stuff that's not necessary because simplicity is great, and really focus on this one value proposition, and as few clicks as possible, and it's minimalistic and responsive. Done. Product. Really. But I found that human beings are so much more complicated than that, and I wish they weren't, but they are. So for me, we did a redesign of the website, and this is how I thought it should have worked, is TransferWise. You say where you want to send money to, you click get started, it takes you to this page where you review, yeah, this is what I want to do, you click continue, and you enter in your details of who you are. And that's how it worked before the redesign, and that was great. Then after the redesign, they want to do this, and you click, and a little thing comes up saying you've got to sign in before you can get started. And I was vehemently, if that's how you pronounce that word, I was vehemently against it, thinking no, that's an extra click. It's people have to put emotion in. They've got to make a decision there and then before seeing the value. This is a terrible idea. This is really, really basic UX. But what we realized was conversion rates increased something like 10% because people would come and they would say, I've got to type an email address and a password. This is a secure place. I am safe here. And also they would realize that whatever they typed in, because we knew who they were, we would save. So there was no such thing as you had to retype it every time. They knew that they were now involved in the product. So in fact, what we were doing was bringing people into the product one step earlier, whereas I thought the product started a couple of steps later. So is that illogical kind of thing that the data managed to make me go, cool, I don't understand humans at all, but I don't need to, because if I can say this number's bigger than that number, then I'm doing a good job. So that's it. Thank you very much, guys.